I have a lot of people I've been sharing your organization and this rally about with, and they've been asking me, well, what exactly do they do? Right. Tracy Jefferson is here from Keeping Our Kids Safe. But like I said before, thank you, thank you, thank you for taking the time and just talking to me about something that I believe is extremely important. And that
Yeah,
is
thanks
really,
so much for having us.
oh, absolutely. I mean, this is why I do this. I want to open conversation for people to understand that we're all doing this for the right reason, and that's our kids. And there
Right.
are real people here in our state that are doing it for our kids. And when I see this, I just feel like God is telling me, get this to the people. Let the people know this is something that needs to be done. This is something being done actively for the right reasons, while so many people are talking about things that don't even impact them. And this
Right.
is why I believe conversations like this are extremely important, whether it's on Zoom or whether it's on face to face, whatever the way we can get the message out there. If we can do that, we can actually keep our kids safe. Why don't you start by just telling us who you are, what your organization is, and let's just go from there.
Yeah, so I became a foster parent right before the pandemic started. So right in 2019. Uh, in 2022 was when I started asking, like, what are our goals around the child welfare system? How do we measure success? And it was because of some of my own personal observations with it.
Right.
In that time, in 2021, the Keeping Families Together Act passed. And it was already starting to change the landscape, even though I didn't realize it then, about what we considered safe for our kids. The Keeping Families Together Act went into full effect in July 1st, 2023. And the goal of it was to apply a standardized threshold of removal to try and address some of the disparities in the system. So, good intentions, right?
Mm-hmm.
Let's reduce unnecessary involvement. But what it actually did was it changed the threshold they changed it to was imminent physical harm. And
Imminent physical harm. Tell,
proving
tell me about that.
imminent physical harm to a child was the threshold to remove a child from a home.
Oh, wow.
Took out um, or made us have to prove, and by us, I mean our social worker friends on the front lines, have to prove a direct causal relationship between circumstances such as not complying with social norms, drug use in the home,
Mm-hmm.
and other conditions that we would not likely consider acceptable for kids, and the risk of imminent physical harm.
Mm.
A few of us started chatting together who were foster parents in the community. And we said, gosh, as they started rolling out the training to us, we were saying, how is this going to work? Yes, we like resources being available to families. Yes, we want families to be together. But how can you do this and keep the kids safe? But
And
by then it was too late.
by the,
The
by
ball was already.
by training, you mean like training as a foster parent, like as a state foster parent? They're
Yeah,
rolling.
kind of
Okay.
like
Okay.
education about what they were going to do and what this meant.
As far as this bill
Then,
taking place and how
yeah,
that affects you as a foster parent. Okay. Wow.
and what it meant for the kids and what it meant for removals. And so we were saying, gosh, I hope they have it all figured out.
Right. Right.
Then in January 2024 was the first fatality that we could really attribute to these changed circumstances. And that was a 5-week-old infant that was in Port Townsend that was found deceased underneath a bush.
Oh no.
And that infant went home with a safety plan, with a support person. Unfortunately, father suffered from substance abuse. Um, and we were all so angry because we felt like you should have seen this coming. We should have
Right.
known that drug use and parenting young children don't mix.
Mm.
Um, we know scientifically that substance abuse, that addiction, that these things change the brain. They change the structure, they change the chemistry. And yes, you can recover, but while you're active in addiction, It's going to change your priorities. It's going to change what you're willing to do to meet the needs of your child. There's a lot of layers to this. And so in our chat group, we said, well, gosh, what do we do? And as you've come to know about me, I'm not somebody who likes to stay quiet. So I said,
Right,
well, let's have a
right.
protest. Let's go to the Capitol. Let's have a rally. Let's tell people about this. Let's stand up for this little boy, because I was
Hmm.
so heartbroken, because that's not keeping families together.
Right. At
And
the end
so
of the
about a
day,
dozen,
if we have dead children, we're not keeping the families
we're
together,
not
and
keeping
that's
them together.
the state
Yeah.
had already had some kind of control and implementation for this child and this family, and then the
Yeah.
result still ends up being the death of a child. Is that what
Right.
you're trying to bring awareness to
We are
for the?
not keeping families together with this act.
Okay.
What became very apparent our first rally is that nobody knew what was happening, including a lot of the people walking in and out of that building.
Hmm.
So then the problem kept getting worse. We started hearing more and more of these stories. We started hearing foster parents reaching out. Then we started getting guardian ad litems, court appointed special advocates reaching out. We started getting visit supervisors reaching out saying it's worse than anybody realizes.
Oh, really?
And that really emboldened us to keep speaking out, to keep standing up. So last year, we decided to found our nonprofit, Keeping Kids Safe, um, with the intention of saying we can honor families and we can honor bonds and we can honor attachments while we still protect the innocence of childhood.
For your organization, you're more like a an advocacy group of foster parents that work with the system, see the some of the pros and the cons to how the system is working, and at the end of the day are just trying to advocate on behalf of the children.
Yeah, so, and we're not just foster parents anymore. That was how our little chat group had started. We actually have visit agencies who are supporting us now, and the WFSE Social Worker Union Local 889 actually helped us sponsor one of the billboards that we put up about our upcoming rally.
Right, right.
So the frontline social workers actually testified about the Keeping Families Together Act and what their concerns were, including the increased workload that they were going to face with this new burden of proof that they had,
Mm.
and how that was going to compromise and compound the problem. So what we have now happening is a perfect storm of increased safety risks that we're leaving kids in the home of, increased workload and caseloads for our social worker staff, a budget crisis with reduced staffing for case carrying positions at the department,
Is
and a fentanyl crisis, and a homelessness problem, and then an increased burden of proof. So we have social workers who are writing 30 and 40-page reports, and they're not legal experts, but they're writing 30 and 40-page reports trying to prove all of these risks in the home and how it puts the child at risk of imminent physical harm. And then um, they're not able to give these families the attention they need to really heal.
that because they're stretched thin? There's not enough social workers for the amount of work that they're taking place just because of this, or is that just overall social workers in relation
It's
to?
a compounded problem. So, the Keeping Families Together Act, what we understand from our social worker friends is that it significantly increased the workload that
Wow.
they have to complete. So the number of hours per case, right? So we talk about two numbers. We talk about their caseloads, which is the number of cases assigned to them, but then we talk about their workloads, which is the number of hours they invest into each case. And both of those went up. So the workload went up because of this burden of proof, because of the change in the threshold, and a couple other pieces in the law. They, if you are going to work every day and you feel like it's conflicting with your morals or with your ethics, or you don't feel like you're able to be successful, then you're less likely to stay in that job. If you feel
Right.
like your workload is crushing, then you're less likely to stay in that job. So then we have increased staff turnover for the department,
Wow.
and which then reduces the experience level. Meanwhile, the chronic complexity and the needs of the families are
Or
escalating.
what I'm hearing is the social workers themselves are pretty much pleading that they need help and that
Yeah.
as this bill has taken place, there has been a significant increase of not only more harm to the children, but just the workload that they cannot keep up with and help all of the families that are in this position.
Yeah, and we see that cited in the publicly available fatality reports over and over again. Staffing turnover, high caseloads at the office,
And is this CYSF?
DCYF, yeah.
DC, yeah, excuse me, DCY. You knew the acronym.
It's alphabet
Yeah,
soup, yeah. I threw out a lot
DCYF.
of
Okay.
acronyms, yeah.
Yeah, because I've seen the of course like the signs and stuff that everybody else sees like, wait, we need foster parents, we need advocates and stuff like that, but it's kind of vague, and I don't think the common people necessarily know that these are issues that we're essentially paying for. Um,
Right.
being that this is it's a government issue, and we the taxpayers are literally paying, and this is what it sounds like to me based on what you've told me, and you're saying that the social workers are testifying this. It seems to me like we the people in Washington state are paying to keep kids in danger, and that is
Yeah.
a direct reflection of this bill taking place. Not only the
It,
danger because it changes the threshold in their wording, but because of the high amount of workload, the social worker burnout, etc., you lose the experience and, of course, the amount of people that you would have to carry out these things and help these families. So I just want to make
yeah,
sure I'm
and
clear. This isn't like a 10-year overall thing. This is what's been happening over the last few years, just since this bill has taken place. Is that what I'm hearing?
correct. One of their goals was to reduce the number of children in out-of-home care. Also, noble goal. We should try to keep families together.
Right.
Again, nobody's saying we don't want families to be together. Placements and out-of-home removals or removals to place in out-of-home care were already on a downward trend for a few years prior to the implementation
Oh
of
wow.
this bill.
And that was just
And
with
so
standard practices.
without the increase in critical incidents. And I want to touch on your point real quick also about how these are things that taxpayers are paying for, right? We're
Right.
paying for kids to stay in homes that we wouldn't accept the conditions of for the general population of children in our
Hmm.
state. We're um, having inefficiencies at the department because of turnover, because of high workloads that are contributing and compounding the problem, not for lack of effort from our frontline social workers. And I always want to be clear on that because they get a lot of bad publicity, but they really work hard to try and keep these families together and keep them safe. But now we start adding what's called adverse childhood experience trauma scores up,
Mm.
right? And one of the things that they talked about when they were discussing this bill was the harm that happens when you remove a child from their first parents or
Right.
their
Right.
parents of origin, right? And one of the things they cited in their training was that children who are removed from their homes are less likely to graduate high school,
Mm.
which is true, but that statistic started before you ever removed the child from the home from what's called adverse childhood experiences, which is a standardized way to sort of score how much trauma a child has endured or things that add up and increase risk for other problems later in life. So when we look at this, we're not just paying for this as taxpayers now, we're paying for this throughout the rest of these kids' lives when we allow them to stay in unsafe circumstances, when we allow them to experience ongoing trauma. These adverse childhood experience scores add up. And then they are more likely to need special support services in school, right?
Mm.
So then our teacher and our special education service ratios are askew,
Wow. So this
and we're
is
paying for that.
this is it
They
just
are
keeps
more
knocking
likely
down the
to, yep,
dominoes.
they are
Wow.
more likely to have autoimmune disorders as adults. They are less likely to graduate high school, which means loss of earning potential. They are more likely to become involved with the criminal justice system. So then we're paying for it there too. They're more likely to experience homelessness, poverty. They're more likely to commit abuse and neglect. So really what we've done, and this is why our slogan for our rally that's coming up has been Save Our Kids, Save Our State,
Mm.
is because none of the problems that we are facing in Washington right now with homelessness, poverty, drug use, mental health crisis, none of it gets better long term if we don't start with our kids and if we don't start
Absolutely.
investing in them to be kept safe right now. We want to address gun violence in schools. It starts by teaching kids how to handle problems the right way, the safe way. It doesn't get better um, by us ignoring what's happening in the home.
Word. I have a lot of people I've been sharing your organization and this rally about with, and they've been asking me, well, what exactly do they do? Right? And so listening to what you were just telling me, it sounds like you kind of like are the advocates for the social workers as far as like the education that the social workers can't necessarily get out to the public. Are you guys educating the public, or like what is it that you guys are actually doing as far as keeping the kids safe organization, um, so that way the people can know and how they can get involved and stuff like that?
So I'll be fully transparent with everybody we talk to. We are very grassroots and we are very much, we've been learning this as we go. All of us are parents. Several of us on the board are foster parents also, or adoptive, or kinship placements. All of us have full-time jobs as
Right.
well.
Right.
And so this is just has been a mission of passion, right? We believe in this so strongly. And one of the things that I always tell kids that come into my home is it's a grown-up's job to keep you safe.
Absolutely.
And I tell them, how can I know that this is happening and look you in the eye and tell you it's my job to keep you safe? I
Mm.
can't know that kids are dying. I can't know that kids are left there without trying to raise awareness. And so that's been our primary mission
Raising
so far,
awareness.
because we just got out and on the ground running April of 2025. And so our primary focus has been raising awareness, helping make sure everybody has the information they need in order to make informed decisions about how we keep kids safe. We
Wow.
don't pretend to have all the answers. This is a complex system with a lot of brokenness in people and in the circumstances, and it's often generational,
Yeah.
right? And so we don't pretend to have all the answers, but what we do need is people to be informed about what's happening and get
Hmm.
the right people to the table and hear from the right people. And we need the right people emboldened to speak up so that we can come up with better solutions,
Right.
so that we can come up with better outcomes. Let's come up with a child-centric child welfare system,
Ooh.
one that focuses on the outcomes of the kids rather than where the kids land at permanently. Let's focus on one that reduces involvement in the criminal justice system, that reduces the number of
Mm.
runaways, that increases the graduation rates. Because if we focus on those outcomes, then we know that whatever policies or laws we put into place, we're driving true improvement for the future, and that we're really leaving them with a better future than they started with.
Right.
And there's things that are written into the laws about what qualifies as a near fatality that I wasn't aware of. Those are
Mm.
not things that they train you on when they're teaching you how to be a healthcare provider. They don't teach you that Narcan, giving somebody Narcan, does not count as a near fatality unless a healthcare provider certifies that the person was in serious or critical condition.
Is that to include minors?
Yes.
Wow.
So we
And we're
have
paying for
passed out
this.
we have passed out 23,000 harm reduction kits in about a year in
Wow, that's
Washington
amazing.
state. And some of those harm reduction kits are good, right?
Hmm.
The parent whose teenager is battling substance abuse, or the parent who has a kid in their home who's maybe struggling with mental health and suicidal, and we need to keep medications and things locked up. Those are good uses of these
Right.
lock boxes and these kits. Happened after this Keeping Families Together Act came out, though, is that we started expanding the use of these lock boxes. And so the lock boxes and doses of Narcan are now being given to families that are potentially even living on the streets
Yeah.
So we don't have housing for them, but we're giving them a lockbox with Narcan in it
Res-
and saying, keep your kids safe. So these
Invited.
fatalities and near fatalities that we talk about, and the Ombudsman's Office released data early for 2025, which is the first time I've ever heard of that happening. And in July, they said in the first 6 months of 2025, we had 92 children who died or nearly died. That's a child every other day.
Wow.
That is like 3 elementary school classrooms. So if that record holds true, we're looking at almost 200 kids in 2025 who died or nearly died, and
And
who
and
were
the public doesn't know anything about this.
right because why would it's
That
hard to talk about those things because there's no easy solution.
regardless of if there's a solution or not, why not bring the facts to the table or to the public so we can help make solutions? We're never
Right.
ever going to get solutions if people don't know. So for instance, I had no idea that this bill was even a thing, and I'm involved pretty heavily in what bills and thing goes on. And I'm hearing the pros and the cons on this one specifically, and it baffles me that you would think if this is the case, why wouldn't we give this information to the public, not to show that this is failing, but just like, look, we need public support, experience. Who has something to bring to the table for these kids?
Right.
We're never going to get that offer if people don't know that it's needed. So the way I look at it, if we're already paying for this and it's not working, why shouldn't the state or the DCYF or social workers, anybody, and I get they don't want it to look bad, but it would make sense to let people know, hey, look, we need some help here. And
Right.
I know there's a lot of experience and expertise out there, whether it be from the church, different advocacy groups, keeping our kids safe. There's different ways to skin a cat, and if we can be proactive rather than reactive, our kids will have a future because they're going
Right.
to inherit what we leave behind. So if we do this proactively now, they're going to be able to help us pick up the slack, and they're going to feel like they want to because an adult cared for them when nobody else did. That's kind of how I see these things working, but people will only be able to come together and do that if they know there's an issue,
If we talk about the
if we
problem.
talk about it. And
In Yakima, one of the reports was a 7-month-old infant who died
mm,
and was left in a crib next to the toddler sibling who
wow,
also needed hospitalized because they were malnourished. And we had services in that home for 2 years. There was another
wow.
case with siblings where there were 85 intakes.
So
And we didn't tell the family, you can do better. We didn't help them do better. We didn't remove that child. We didn't intervene for that child. And then when the child died, we gave the parents a founded finding for neglect and abuse.
is
Not until
malnourishment
the
not
child died.
is malnourishment for an infant, is that not something that would classify as needing intervention?
Well, yeah, these were 2 separate cases, and they did have intervention in that Yakima home for 2 years.
Wow.
Service providers who were going in and out of the home, offering mental health services. Um, it's listed in the fatality report that they were wearing personal protective equipment to go into the home because of the conditions of the home.
Wow.
What came out um, when this hit the news in Yakima, what came out was that there had actually been animal cruelty charges against the parent in that home because of the conditions of the home and the way the pets were being treated. But we couldn't intervene for the children in that case. And that's what is is so
Wait a
devastating.
minute.
So now we
Wait.
have a toddler who had to sit there in a crib next to a deceased sibling who we now
Oh
want
my
to,
goodness.
after 2 years of neglect, right, and malnourishment, and we want that toddler to grow up and become a resilient, high functioning adult with a successful career, graduate high school, develop healthy relationships with people around them. And so we are failing our society on so many levels if we don't fix this.
Mm.
The 5-year-old who was tortured and beaten to death, in Federal Way had siblings. There were other children in that home who witnessed that. The adolescent boy who was left with over 1,000 marks on his body from a 3-hour beating for not doing his chores.
Wow.
There were siblings in the home. There are other people that we are subjecting to this, not just the fatalities and near fatalities. And when we think about these 23,000 harm reduction kits that I was referring to a minute ago, DCYF put on their website, I think 750 something doses of Narcan had helped save lives, which is great. I want lives saved. I don't want people dying of overdoses when there's a safe medication we can give them. But that's not something we should be celebrating.
Right.
We should be celebrating that Narcan is available and that we didn't need to use it because we did the right thing
Right.
by helping get addiction recovery happening, by getting people into treatment programs, by protecting their kids.
Not just putting a Band-Aid on it.
While they sought treatment. Right. And how many of those doses, and we don't have an answer on this yet, but how many of those 750 something doses were kids administering it to their parents to save their parents from an overdose? How many of them were kids having to administer it to a sibling while the parents were unavailable and a kid overdosed? How many more doses should have been given that weren't given that we don't know about yet?
Hearing this is basically just because of one particular bill. And that to me is what is very shocking, that this amount of neglect can take place because of this bill. Because you did mention to me that there were some protesters in opposition of this day of action, this rally that you guys are sponsoring. Directly on the 14th, you guys, and I say you guys, it says keeping our kids safe. We have a day of action in Olympia. And the main thing is helping change the child welfare laws that are systemically failing. At-risk children and foster kids, there's a 200% increase in fatalities and near fatalities. And that's just since the Keeping Families Together Act went into place in 2023. And here we are, the beginning of 2026, and there's people that are protesting what you guys are doing. Can you tell me a little bit about the protesters, or just what is their position? What are they saying? And are they making any points that are valid?
I think where the conversation breaks down and where we find opposition is when people think that we want all of these kids yanked from homes and to separate families. And a common misperception about foster parents is that we all just want to run out there and adopt all these kids.
Right.
Many of us are willing to be permanent homes for the kids if reunification is not something that can safely happen.
Right.
So where the conversation breaks down at, and I find this a lot in whatever topic we're discussing that can have strong, compelling emotions, right? Where the conversation breaks down at is that everybody's primary focus is keeping the kids safe.
Yes.
We just disagree about how to get there. We disagree about how to approach the problem. And we never want the pendulum to swing back to where it was in the 80s, where you had to get your high school diploma to be considered a safe parent, or you had to get your driver's license. You couldn't rely on public transportation in order to be considered a, quote, safe parent, because those things have nothing to do with whether you provide a safe and nurturing home for your child. What does have everything to do with it, though, is whether or not you're able to be present, whether or not you're able to meet their needs. And there's a lot of different ways that we can help parents do that. One of the things that we see, though, and we're all on board with helping parents get help, with helping families find stability, with long-term, success, with real accountability, with real redemption. I firmly believe in that. What is happening, though, and what we see in the fatality reports over and over again, is that the parents were offered services and they refused. And one of the things that we are calling out And one of the things that we have to accept is that sometimes parents cannot or will not make the right choice for their kids. And
Mm,
in those cases, we do need to have policies and practices that prioritize the rights of the child to be safe, to have some stability, to be nurtured.
I,
Last year, we did have a few people show up, and
what was that
I
like?
didn't I didn't recognize what they were there to do. And so
Hmm.
I actually invited them to march with us,
Okay.
not even realizing that they were there in opposition to what we were standing up for, because I have a really hard time if somebody will sit down and have the conversation with us. I have a really hard time understanding where that disagreement would happen at,
Right.
because we do want kids to be safe. We do want families to be together. And like we were just saying a minute ago, that's why we have to have these conversations.
Absolutely. That to me, I think is probably the most important facet of this whole thing is making sure that the conversations are had. Um, and I can see where you're coming from, especially after you breaking down like just how this bill and the results of this bill. I can see where you're coming from. I really can. I can also kind of see where some of the opposition would come into play. It's saying, well, at the end of the day, the state has enough control over our kids, our lives already.
Right.
I'm the parent. I don't need to give the state any more control, or the state has no right to tell me how I raise or do what I do with my child.
Yep.
And I can, to some degree, I can see that, but of course, a lot of us agree that if you are harming the child or the child is being harmed, not taken care of, that there is a place and a time where people that do care are willing to step in. And
And that's where I
and
think the disagreement happens at too, is what do we consider harm? Where
or
is that threshold at?
or what do we consider good versus bad parenting? Um, is another question. Like I said, we can only have these things by having conversations because there are, and I'm not going to say every instance everything is a case by case basis, but there's a lot of people who, if they had the choice, would move completely outside of the normal governmental society and do their own
Right.
thing how they want to, regardless of how the government says that this is right. And I kind of believe that, and I say, well, you do have a right to do so. Just don't hurt anybody, don't, especially kids, right?
As long as
And
it's not infringing on other rights.
right, and if you're willing to hurt a child or just neglect a child, then be willing for somebody who wants to help that child, be willing to take them in and listen to what they have to say versus just being in opposition of somebody stepping on their parental rights. And I
Right.
think if there is like solid opposition, I think it would only be like, well, what parental rights do we have? And that doesn't mean that you should have the right to harm your child, but that does just bring up a solid question of how much power do we allow the state or the Fed or any of these agencies to have over the parent?
Yes. And we have to determine like where the children's rights and the parents' rights, when those
Right.
clash, then what do we do?
Mm-hmm. And that's,
And what are the steps we
if
take?
we don't have those conversations and ask about what are those steps that we take, we're not going to solve this issue. And there's more people that I think agree than disagree once they
Yeah.
know the truth. If you can lay out the truth, this is the result of this bill. Okay? This is the result of this bill. This is what the social workers are saying specifically on this bill, particularly. So it's not that we're trying to come for your parental rights, but something does need to happen because we shouldn't have these results if we're trying to keep families together and safe. Have you had any state leadership or even county leadership, city leadership reach out to you in regards to this event that you guys are holding? And if so, have they mentioned anything in relation to this bill specifically? Like, what are they talking about?
Job, and we're so thankful to the community that's rallied around us
Mm-hmm.
at making some noise. And we've had a lot of meetings since our last rally. A lot of conversations have happened. I've had the privilege of meeting with the parent advisory group with DCYF. We had a meeting just this morning with the legal counsel for youth and children. We've talked with the social worker union. We've talked with a large number of state representatives.
Okay.
And I do believe that they are understanding that there's an issue and that we need to do something to fix it. Again, I think there's disagreement happening on what to do to fix it.
Mm-hmm.
What we have heard back from a lot of them is that they need us to help them get a fix across the finish line by showing how much this matters to the community.
Mm.
By showing up on January 14th, by showing them that this matters to the voters in Washington state,
Mm-hmm.
that this is not just a keeping kids safe group issue, that this is not just a social worker union issue. They need us to show up and tell them loud and clear and make it very evident that this is a Washington state issue. Because if we don't fix this, we are not setting ourselves up for a path of success or to fix any of the problems that are facing us right now.
Mm.
And I'll just call this out, and this is always my call to action. It is our job as grown-ups to keep kids safe. That doesn't mean if you're a foster parent, you keep kids safe. It doesn't mean if you're a teacher, you keep kids safe. It doesn't mean if you're a social worker, you keep kids safe. It means all of us in Washington state who are adults and consider ourselves grown-ups need to take ownership, accountability, and responsibility for our next generation and stand up for what's right for them, even if it's a hard conversation to have, and even if we disagree about how to get there.
Mm.
We all acknowledge on some level that we are not doing what's right for our future right now, and we got to fix it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm really hoping to see a good turnout and event for this, because this is something I believe matters so much more than just arguing about the fraud here, the whatever going on there. These are our kids. And if we can't come together for our kids, then what are we doing? What are we really doing?
And what can we come together for?
Exactly.
If we can't come together for these innocent lives, for these most vulnerable people in our state, then what are we doing?
I agree.
And I do believe that we have a couple representatives who are going to be showing up at the rally.
I hope so.
And I'm really excited about that. I'm also excited to say it's bipartisan. We have people on both sides of the aisle who acknowledge that this is something we have to get fixed.
When it comes to the kids, it shouldn't be a partisan issue.
That's exactly what I was just going to say. This is not a partisan issue. This is not the line we draw on party aisles, because these are our kids.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Is there anything in particular for this event that you want people to know? Just for this event specifically, anything that you want them to know, stuff to bring, stuff to try to talk about? Because it's called a day of action. So I'm trying to see, like, what is going to be the end result here? Are we going to have people learning how to and what steps to take, or volunteer opportunities for them to join the organizations, things like that? So that way we can let the people know, like, this isn't just coming in and yelling at the system. We're actually trying to get something done. Is that something that you guys are working towards for this event specifically?
Yeah. So from 10 to 12:30, we're going to be at the Tivoli Fountain. Okay. We're partnering with Fostering Change with the Social Worker Union, and we're going to have a couple reception tents set up there. We have a token of appreciation for our representatives that we're going to go deliver to them in the halls. We're going to teach people where their representatives are at.
Oh, wow. Nice.
And we're going to help them have that little reminder in their office that the kids are not a priority this session. They are the priority this session. We're going to have some information about how to testify for bills, how to contact your representatives.
There we go. What are That's what I'm talking about.
That we need to be talking about when it comes to this issue. And then from 1 to 3, we're having our main event on the steps of the legislative building, where people are going to get to hear some of the heartbreaking stories and some of the real impact of what their families have experienced. So we're going to hear from some of the families for these kids who have died.
Wow.
Not all of them got a fatality report either.
Oh, wow.
And so we're going to hear how it's not keeping families together
From the actual source, not just
from the
somebody
actual
observe.
source.
Okay. Wow. See,
Not
that's
not
the
just
part I
me
think is
reading a
important.
fatality report, not
There we
just me
go.
reading a headline.
These are the
So we're
people
going
who
to,
actually experience this firsthand and want to share
yeah.
their story with the people. Okay.
And we're going to see like what some of the long-term consequences of the circumstances we leave kids in the home of
Mm,
are, because the kids who survive these conditions, the kids who survive abuse, they got a long path to recovery that we got to invest in also. We can't
absolutely.
just say, well, we got you out of there now that something devastating happened and wash our hands of you. We got
Right.
to be there to support them long term.
The follow up. Where's the follow
Yep.
up? Right. Staying consistent with them so they know that somebody actually cares through this
Yeah.
process. Wow. Well, Tracy, I want to say thank you for everything that you're doing and what you have started. Because I'm out here in the community a lot, and it's really hard to find people that are doing, and it's even harder to find people that are doing for our kids.
Yeah.
And because the motivations, when you're working with kids, the motivation cannot be selfish. It has to
No.
be focused entirely on being proactive, doing something for them, and them actually seeing that an adult actually cares. Not just that they're saying that they care because that's their job, but the whole reason that they got into this to begin with was because they care. They saw where the issue was, and now we're trying to fix it. And that's
Yep.
what I'm seeing here. And I love grassroots. I'm also pretty much grassroots myself, and I do a lot of the stuff. Uh, it can be tough. It can be tough,
Yeah.
especially when you face opposition for something that you've worked so hard on, and you can see how this is impacting families, impacting kids, and it doesn't register to you. Like, how do you not see how this is harming and not helping? It can
Yeah.
be frustrating. And
And I'm a humble person. I'm willing to admit if I'm wrong. Show me, have the conversation with me, prove me wrong.
absolutely,
Show me why my thought patterns need change. Show
exactly.
me.
It
But
only
we can't
happens with
just stick our head
conversation.
in the sand. It does.
Thank you. Yes, thank you. We cannot stick our head in the sand. It's, I mean, it should be a no brainer when it comes to the kids. Like, you would think everybody would instantly want to jump on this. Oh, there's something being done really for my kids here. Well, let's get on it.
Yeah.
And I'm going to try my best to help keep pushing this and sharing the information for this stuff because I believe that this is extremely important. And you got
Thank you.
my support. This is something amazing, Tracy. I want to say thank you again for talking with me and sharing the insight on this. Is there anything that you want to share with the audience, with the general public, or anything, last notes or anything before we wrap this up?
Oh, I'll see you all January 14th, rain or shine.
You guys know what to do. Thank you so much, Tracy.